recording, and of course, people attending as well have access to the recording when you are registered. Good. So good afternoon. I'm Michael Dieudonné. I'm the project coordinator of 6G-SANDBOX. Today we're holding an information session about the open call that 6G-SANDBOX is launching or has launched, with the intention basically to help people understand what is expected and how to make sure that you can apply, hopefully successfully, to the 6G-SANDBOX open call. We'll go over first part, what is the open call, how does it work, technical information. Then we have normally a short break just for the people to grab lunch here at the conference, as we are live at the EuCNC. And then basically we have an open Q&A session. So if you have any question at that time, we'll be able to basically answer, whether it's online, it's also valid for the people online, or basically people in the room. So from that perspective, everybody should be able to see it. Okay, do you see the slides? Am I sharing my screen? No, it looks not good, so I will do that now. Give me a second, sharing here. Good. Yeah, perfect. Good. Just to be very clear here, if you have any question during the call, you can raise your hand if something is not clear. You can also, here in the room, just make a sign. I will see you, of course. Pedro will monitor the hands on the chat. You can also ask your question through the chat functionality. No problem. Yeah, let's start basically. So what is 6G-SANDBOX? 6G-SANDBOX is, of course, an SNS-JU called one project. It's a stream C. It's one of the 3 experimental platforms towards 6G, right? And as a project, we target basically to become a key facility for experimentation. So we really want to be the place where you can come and test your technology, validate your technology. A lot of developers, and we see that really at EuCNC, are doing a great work on developing technology, but then we want to offer you the ability to test it on a more large scale capability and network. Okay, so if you look at the project, we have basically 3 main aspects to it, right? We are realizing the concept of trial networks so that we can validate your 6G KPI and KVI. So trial network as a concept is really the ability to develop and deploy a network based on your wish, meaning accessing the parameters to the detail if you need, but also leveraging potential configuration that are coming out of the box that you can, of course, modify or not, right? And you're using this to validate your research, which is really looking, for example, at certain type of KPI or how your technology would influence certain type of KPI and KVI. Sandbox is composed of 4 locations, 4 facilities, as we call them: Athens, Berlin, Malaga, and Oulu. We'll give you a very short introduction about each of the facility. We have a slides on that, and you will find basically more technical information as well per facility in some of the documentation I will be pointing you to. So this is a way for you to prepare and understand what is available. And based on that, you can, of course, create your proposal and your and position your technology in a good sense. We're really open, and that is really the purpose of this first open call, to extend the facility. So we have already a lot of technology, but we are not having everything, of course. And that's where basically we're very open for people to say, hey, I have that technology. I think this would be interesting for the project to offer this later on as a technology for running experimentation. You're very welcome to contact us. This can be happening through the open call, of course, with funding, but this is also very valid without open call. And we're open for wide interactions from that perspective. So open call itself. Now, one point I want to stress is that we as a consortium have decided to be open for anyone who wants to engage with us, with or without funding. And without funding is a very simple way. You contact us, you say, look, we have that technology, or we want to run this experimentation. You can at any time contact us to come and run the experimentation, whether it's physically or remote from that perspective. That is a very simple way, because from the moment we are starting to talk about open call, then automatically we're talking about public procurement, meaning that there is people that will decide whether you or not are awarded basically that amount of money. When we speak about the bilateral or direct contacts, there is no panel who needs to validate basically what you're doing. You just engage directly with us. Now, of course, the session today is mainly around open call, and that's what we'll be discussing. So everything I'm saying for open call is of course valid for people that work direct. But from an open call perspective, the project will have 3 open calls during the program lifetime. It's a 3-year project. We started in January, and we have 1.7 million to redistribute. We will be doing that into 3 different calls. We're talking about the first call. There will be a second call later on towards November, open, with something that should be done by January, February 24 with respect to submission. And there is a third open call, which will open during summer 2024 with a deadline end of 2024. Now, the different open calls have a different objective. The open call 1 is really about infrastructure and functionality. So we want you to come and propose technology that you can add to the project, which can be used for the rest of the project. So something we put in the project now with the intention to be used for Open Call 2 and Open Call 3 as technology for running experimentation. So very simple, you come with a block that becomes part of the 6G-SANDBOX infrastructure. That block will be made available for Open Call 2 and Open Call 3 to run experimentation on it. If you look at Open Call 2, this is already a bit of migration from pure infrastructure and expansion towards more experimentation. And so from Open Call 2, there we are more expecting people that are saying, hey, I have an interesting idea, or I would like to try something, and I would like to use the infrastructure. So it's not really contributing directly to the infrastructure, it's more towards basically experimentation. And Open Call 3 towards the end of the project is a pure experimental type of open call. There we're only expecting people to present ideas around using the platform as such to help their R&D and their activity. Now, based on the 1.79 million euro that is available, we expect to have around 35 third-party companies, universities, group benefiting from the funding that gets redistributed. Okay, so how do you get to 35? Well, you take the amount expected per, and you divide that basically the 1.79 million by 35 by 70. Somebody having a question? Sorry. No? Okay. Good. What is the timeline on Open Call 1? So Open Call 1 is open, right? I think we have published that in April. We were basically the first from the SNSJU to publish the open call. The deadline for submission is 3rd of July, 5 p.m. Central European time. This is not a conference, so we will not extend the deadline. Okay, so 5 p.m. the portal shut down, and I'm sorry if you're 501, that's basically too late. So make sure you submit before. Normally, I think we have time. It's more than a month. We're not expecting 60 page like EU project, so it should be feasible to submit in advance. One important aspect that we feel is the feasibility check. So of course, we know what we have as infrastructure, as technologies. We try to be as clear as possible towards the community so that you know what we have available, but we believe it's important that you can do a feasibility check before you submit. The feasibility check is an abstract of your proposal describing, hey, this is what we want to do, or this is what we intend to do, and you send that to us in advance. There, the deadline for feasibility check is the 23rd of June, which is about 2 weeks before the timeline. It enables us to read what you're planning to do and potentially ask questions or have an interaction about the feasibility of what you want to do. As if somebody comes with, hey, I need to have 3 petabytes of link, for example, well, then we'll tell you, sorry, we cannot do that, right? So it's important that when you are coming with something, you're coming with basically a proposal that we can verify. And this needs to be submitted to the email address you have here, opencalls@6gsandbox.eu. This gets back to the team, to the 6G-SANDBOX team. We will be reading what is written and we will be answering. So it's important that you're sending something technically sound that we can understand. If not, we will ask questions, but we want to make sure that we are understanding what you do. This leads to the feasibility check. The feasibility check is something we'll have to do anyway for all the proposals coming in, even if you don't do the feasibility check. But with the deadline of the 23rd of June, it gives us the time to interact in case. And we can tell you we already have multiple people that sent inputs, right? And in some cases we say, yes, no problem. Some cases we have been providing feedback, hey, you need to adapt this and this because of certain infrastructure aspects. It's important that this is done in advance to make sure that we are doing it, okay? If you don't do feasibility check, no problem. We will review your inputs and your application, but there will not be time for any interaction. So it will be, is it feasible based on what we see? Yes or no? And that's it, okay? So we strongly recommend the 23rd of June before that you basically engage with us in a discussion through basically sending a description to the open call email address. Yes, question.
The feasibility can in case be used also to make some questions.
The feasibility can be used. Yes, you can ask questions. Yeah.
You have some questions.
Always.
I mean, description of the idea plus some questions for feasibility on the side of the idea.
Correct. So the question is, can the visibility also be used to ask additional questions, just in case people online didn't hear your comment? The answer is yes. So you can send us an email with questions. You can send us an email with a description of what you do, whether you have still question. This is, I would say, a discussion process. Okay, so it's not a black hole where everything disappears. We will be answering this question. What is very important here is also to make sure, and this is why this meeting is also recorded and publicly available. We will, if there are interesting questions, we will also add them to the FAQ. So we have an FAQ section on the open call. If you ask something and that answer is relevant, we will add that to the FAQ, not with your name, not with your company. That's of course confidential or private from that perspective, but relevant question will be added to the FAQ. Okay. So for example, if you ask processor bit quantity and we say 32, well, we'll put that into the FAQ so that everybody has access to that information. Simple example. Submission process. So we have an online portal where people need to basically submit their application. We have a template online that you need to use. It's important because we want to make sure that experts, and I'll come back to that, have basically the same information structure so that they can evaluate the proposals. As a proposer, you must provide a declaration of honor at submission time. So there is a document which is basically something that states that you have not received already funding for that type of activity, that this is different, that you're not basically reusing and so on. So you will read the declaration of honor needs to be provided and signed basically at submission level, okay? And the language of the proposal must be English. Sorry, we are not able to offer translation services, so please use English. So all information are basically available on the websites on Open Call 1. If you have questions again on the process, feasibility check whatsoever, and you don't get your answer today, feel free to contact us by email, no problem with that. About the funding and the eligibility. So funding is maximum per party, per entity participating is 60k euro. Okay. If you have a very good reason to go above the 60k, you can always justify it. It's not clear whether it will be granted or not. Okay. But as a best practice, the 60k is somehow the line. Now, you can apply a single entity or you can basically team up with multiple people, multiple group, multiple entities. If you are a consortium, what we would typically call a consortium, then we are putting a cap at basically 180k, assuming that you're at least 3 participants. Okay, so we are not imposing single participants. You can come with multiple company. There is no real limitation on the quantity, but the total pot is 180k. Contribution and funding rates as applicable to the 6GIA. So if you're a large company, you're not getting 100%, you're getting 90%, the for-profit organization. For not for profit, it's of course 100%. So we just follow the 6GIA rules from a funding perspective. And for this first open call, we have 540,000 euro available. That is basically the amount of money from the 1.79 million that I mentioned that has been allocated basically to the extension. As you understand from seeing the money, the extension amount is lower than the total amount we will run for experimentation, because that's the core of the project, is to run experimentation. It's not just to build technology. About the eligibility, we are following the rules from the Horizon Europe work program. Okay, so this means that our UK partners, an example, basically you can participate, you can apply, but you need to go to the UK government for the funding. For all the other European country where you typically would get money directly from the EU, you are basically eligible. Switzerland and UK are the two ones that basically are a bit strange in the story, if I may say. Okay, ask the politician to fix this, please, if you can. You can propose multiple projects, but it might be that we're only selecting one. So there is a problem, I would say, with the FSTP, that we cannot basically have 10 different awards from the same company. Okay, so from that perspective, one is probably the amount we can select due to this limitation on the quantity of funding. Okay, and we as consortium member, we cannot apply. It's very simple. So any company that is related to us cannot apply. We're still checking for multinational if the same company in another country would be applicable or not. We are waiting for feedback from the project officer. We have two readings. You have on one hand the grant agreement reading that the answer is no. On the other hand, maybe they are treated as separate legal entity. So we are still checking that. We are not having a definitive answer yet. Sorry for that. We will have a meeting with our project officer to get that further clarified. I'm still pending on the question because we got the question. Some of us are multinational. Yeah, that can happen. Once you have submitted your project, we will be doing evaluation. We, in the sense, not 6G-SANDBOX, but we will basically have an independent panel of experts evaluating your proposal. So very similar to an SNSJU call, you submit, it gets evaluated by independent experts, and they come back basically to us with a ranked order list based on a set of evaluation criteria. So we're looking, like for the SNSJU, on three elements: impact, innovation and technology, and implementation. You have the weight basically for each of these criteria, and for the criteria you have a minimum threshold to basically be eligible. Very similar to what all of us know when you have applied for a project. I don't think we need to go into detail, but very important to understand is that we as 6G-SANDBOX consortium are not selecting the people that will be selected in the open call. So this is outside of our hands, okay? That's why I'm saying, and I want to reemphasize, if you have very interesting technology and you're not really needing money, contact us and let's just do it directly without passing through the open call, okay? So that is definitely relevant. Once they have done the evaluation, there will be a ranking. The ranking is done based on the overall score, right? We'll have some prioritization meeting in case of equal score. That will be done by the panel of evaluator. And then basically we'll be looking at the specific aspects of the call. So imagine we have two calls for the same technology and we only need one. Well, the best one of that technology will win basically the selection, okay? So that is really, I think, important to understand, is that we know certain technology will be applied by multiple people. It's not a statement about the state of your technology from our perspective if you're not selected, but somebody else is. This is basically because the panel, the independent panel, found that proposal better suited than the other proposal, okay? So that's, I think, important to understand from that perspective. Now, if everything goes well, you pass the evaluation and now you're ready to start and work with us. So we will do the evaluation during the month of July. So that's why I'm saying that the deadline is the deadline. This will not move, okay? We will let people know whether you are successful or not in August. So normally towards end of July, our evaluation process should be completed. You will be informed whether basically you have been successfully selected or not. That's very simple. And during the month of August, basically, as a participant, you will be able to sign the agreement. So there is a contract that is already also online on the open call page. It's a fixed template with all the rules and all the information. During the month of August, we expect you as a third party to basically complete the information and submit your contract signed, such that you can start in September. The intention for you is to start in September 2023 and to basically work until end of February 2024. Now, but this is basically the kind of 6 months period where we expect most of the work from you to integrate your technology in the test beds. Is this the end? No, that's not the end. It's not because you have done your 6 months that basically the work is done. Why? Because as I said, this open call one is very specific. You're bringing technology with the intention to have that technology used by the experimenters. That will be in open call 2 and open call 3. So that means that we, as part of your activity, you need to think about how to support after the completion of the work, the activity, right? So the functionality must be made available to experimenters. That's very important during the rest of the projects. Okay, so 6G-SANDBOX again is a 3-year program. We started in January. We will be ending in December 2026. Or, no, 5? 5, yes, 5, thank you. Until then, basically people may be using your technology. And the functionality you're bringing to the project are building blocks that may require maintenance. So in case you have software, for example, and you are doing a new release because of your development process, please consider doing an upgrade of the version we have. Of course, no breaking change preferably. And if they are breaking change, well, then you have a bit more work at your end to make sure it's working. But do see this as a way to demonstrate and to showcase your technology into the test beds. And that technology hopefully will be used by our experimenters going forward in the project. Yeah, question from, yeah.
The question or the clarification, the contract or the agreement
Yes,
is the terms are fixed.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
correct. So the clarification, correct. So please check the contract in advance, because if you don't agree with the terms and condition written in the contract, it's not negotiable. So don't apply. Don't waste your time. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So, but that's why we have upfront put the contract so that you have time to have your legal department, if you have one, looking into it. We believe it's a fair contract. It's based on previous experience with project, but it's important that you understand that this is the contract. We will not waste time on negotiating a contract during the month of August. That's it. I mean, the commission contract is also non-negotiable, by the way. So that's it. Good. That was so far about the process and what we do. Now I will give you a quick introduction about the different calls objective. So we at 6G-SANDBOX have identified technologies that we believe would be relevant for the consortium and for the project. And this is where we have this list. Okay, so I know it's a bit long list, it's a bit small, but at the same time, I think it's important for you to look and understand what's behind that. Okay, now we are looking at, for example, extension of the NEF emulator that is present in 6G-SANDBOX with AI capability. So AI extensions for the 6G-SANDBOX NEF emulator. That's one technology. So this would, for example, be a capability where you're adding AI, where you're adding a framework to basically connect and control the NEF emulator. Another example, the second line, is integrating LoRaWAN in the 6G-SANDBOX infrastructure. Now, this is not just dropping a LoRaWAN access point and thank you and goodbye. This means integrating, making sure that you can control it, right? Making sure that it's integrated as part of the overall sandbox experimenter capability. Okay, so make sure if you propose LoRaWAN that you're also thinking about integration as part of the testbed. And here, because this is requiring physical hardware, it is up to you to decide if you go for one platform or if you want to do multiple platform. So we'll come back to the platform in a second. This is something that as a proposer you can choose. So there is no problem for that. Another technology we're looking at is NWDAF. So NWDAF capability is something we believe should be added to the 6G-SANDBOX testbed. If you have technology around NWDAF, we would welcome you to basically propose expanding our testbed with that. Same for the NEF capability, right? So we would like to have NEF capability directly into 6G-SANDBOX. If you have that type of technology, you're very welcome again to propose. Release 16 devices. So in case you would have proof of concepts or devices that are basically getting towards release 16, we are also welcoming you to make some proposal. Technology around location information is also welcome. Then we have integrated sensing and communication, right? So, and you can add capability, for example, to save energy by using this technology. These are technology I think that would be interesting. We have quite a lot of ORAN capability already in the consortium, but ORAN, the idea is to have multi-vendor, many different vendors. So we are basically very open to add additional ORAN solutions as well as part of the open call. It can be a different brand than what we currently have. No problem, you can definitely propose it. There is a call around advanced channel modeling capability, so to augment the testbed. So we have a channel emulator as part of the testbed. We have activity around digital twin as well. If you have technology like ray tracing, if you have technology around channel emulation or channel modeling, because you have done that maybe in a previous project or you have that type of technology inside your company, this would be interesting as well to go in. And in that case, you would connect that with the channel emulate, you would connect that with the digital twin activity, just as an example of what to do. Okay. Multi-link backhaul management. I think that's pretty clear on its own, right? This, of course, needs to be integrated with the rest of the platform. Terahertz communication. So we have also the luxury to have access to high frequency equipment. So whatever type of extension you want to do around terahertz communication, getting into higher frequency, higher bandwidth is always open and possible as part of the projects. We have XAPS story around extensions, right? Whatever type of XAPS you may have is always of interest. We will have, as you will see, a RIC. We will have basically the ability to run XAP, RAPs normally on the testbed. Any type of technology around that is welcome and would be interesting. We have, as I mentioned, digital twin as one of the activity in 6G-SANDBOX. If you want to work or expand validated digital twin for deployment, for realistic deployment, that would be very welcome. So this can entail bringing certain technology or validating certain technology around digital twin, definitely of interest for the consortium. If you have Internet of Sense type of activity in your company. So for example, in our consortium, we have OWO as one of the partner. OWO has a jacket for Internet of Sense where you're feeling the bullets when you're playing a game or you have experience, you have the Internet of Sense popping up. If you have alternative pieces of equipment that would basically fit, feel free to propose that as well. So we can expand the Internet of Sense offering as part of the project without any problem. Okay. Don't come with an experiment on the Internet of Sense at this stage. That's not the purpose of Open Call 1. Open Call 1 would be if you bring a jacket or an emulator, something that basically emulates Internet of Sense or actually do feel the Internet of Sense versus basically using it. The usage of it, this is for Open Call 2 and Open Call 3 or indirect as we have been discussing. Expanding the capability with content distribution network for quality of experience. So for example, if you have servers that are basically having content that you're interested in quality of experience over 6G or 5G evolution, all of that is also very welcome. Okay, so this would be an example of technology that can be added. And then basically any other type of 6G capability. I mean, you can understand we are a 6G project. We are now finally having almost 5G everywhere, or it's starting at least. We need to anticipate the technical evolution towards 6G. So at this stage, of course, we have some idea about what would be candidate 6G technologies, but you may have also ideas about new additional 6G capabilities, which we do not have. So from that perspective, whatever has a kind of good 6G kind of content is very welcome in this. And we are also opening up basically for topics that are of interest for the rest of your community, which is going beyond this list, where you feel that, hey, knowing or having discussed with 6G-SANDBOX or reading what we have, we believe this would be a valid expansion. Feel free to propose. And we are not limiting ourselves to this just list and say, hey, if it's falling out of this, we're not accepting it. Okay, so we're pretty open from that perspective. Now, there is one document that we have posted last week on the open call page, which is the facility description. That is, I think, one of the important documents for you as a proposer to understand what is in fact already available. Because if you don't know what is available, how can you say I'm augmenting this? Maybe we already have it, maybe we don't. Maybe you can, out of this information, find how basically you better integrate. So I'll come back to that information in a second, but this is basically the last link on the bottom of these slides. That one is basically containing technical information. And if we feel, based on the discussion with you as potential experiment or as potential proposer, that something is missing, we will be updating technical information in that document in that case. Okay? Yeah, question.
I have a few questions
Yes.
related one to the other. So these research topics, I mean, in a proposal, we should select, I mean, one, or you are open also to.
You can make a proposal with two. Yeah, you can make combination, no problem.
This could be also a selection criteria, if or not. So
this is part of what the evaluators will basically look at. So it's very clear that if somebody say, look, I'm doing 6 out of them and I need 10K, for example, just as an example, right? I mean, I'm making something crazy.
Yeah.
But if you say, look, money doesn't care too much, and I'm happy with a little of money to just travel to the platform to cover my integration time, but I'm bringing this technology, I think the expert panel will definitely see that as very positive.
in principle, there is no restriction. I mean,
There is no restriction.
minimum is one.
Yeah, one or more. Yeah, one or more. The only thing is the 60K is not our rule. Is basically the 60K is defined by basically the third-party funding mechanism where we need to comply. So that's basically how it is. The 60K are there. That's the limit. And if you say I need €5 because I just want to take a plane or something, well, that's fine. This is up to you as a proposer.
And then documentation of the open call for each of these topics, there is a description with some
So
requirements.
we did not put, I think, for each of the topics, a more extensive description in that document. So this document was really with the intention to show you what we have as technology so that you understand. We have not included a description per line. We do have that information because that's how we created the open call. Maybe something we need to add to the documentation. Yeah, part of the open call.
For each line.
Correct. Yes,
some information.
correct. That is where.
Not all of them, but some of them, they have a kind of list of requirements.
Yeah.
Is it say mandatory when we pick one item to support all the requirements?
So I will come back to what we want you to support that we feel very important. What we wrote into the open call technical, the document you're referring, the open call information session, indeed, per line, we have a few lines explaining or trying to clarify what we mean, okay? If you are not doing something that is written there, highlight that and just say why. Because maybe your technology is not ready to do that. Maybe this is something you don't want to do for a good reason. Just be very clear on what you do and what you don't do. Okay, so that is indeed the internal document we had prepared for the open call. I forgot it's exactly in that document. The technical document here, the technical information document, is more us as platforms to explain you what is available so that you understand the architecture and you understand the technology that is present. Okay.
And then very last,
Yeah.
if you cover this later, in the proposal, we should also select which testbed, or there is a minimum of 1, 2.
A minimum. So the question is, and that's an important question, are you obliged to participate to all the facilities? The minimum implementation is 1 facility. The more facility you do, the better. Now, for hardware, for example, I can fully understand that you say, look, I only do 1, and then you decide the location. You can also say it's 1 of the 4. I don't care which 1 of the 4. That's up to you. Software, hopefully, is something we can deploy more than 1. But if you, for very specific reason, want to limit it to 1, put that into your documents. Okay, so this is basically what is, you are the one proposing. So we, of course, prefer to have facilities that are up to date with all the capability for all the 4, but even within the consortium, that just is not possible. So you will always have differences per facility. There is nothing we can do about that. Each of them has a bit his specificity and his focus. Okay, so based on that, if your technology is something that you can deploy on the 4, yes, great, better. If you say for specific reason I'm only going for 1, we accept that as well. But it's 1 or more, not 0 or more, right? Good. Yes, but that I'll come back. So the requirements is coming back because you were asking about what are the requirements, what do we expect, and this is coming now. So first 4 slides, just to show you what type of information you have in the technical documentation. So this is basically, I took the platforms in alphabetic order. Each platform has basically a diagram like this, which show the architecture, where you have the brands of the different vendors that are basically installed. And there is a text as well describing the capability of the platform. So that is what you will find in the technical information. So as an example, the Aten platform here is divided into 2 testbeds that are connected. One is from Cosmote, one is from NCSRD. And you see basically what type of infrastructure they have deployed, what type of technology is available. Okay. And for each of these architecture, you see what is basically existing and what is basically in development or currently integrated. Okay, so that gives you also a bit an idea on the maturity of the platform, and because these platforms were not born because of 6G-SANDBOX, of course, they're coming because of previous projects which have evolved and contributed, and the current state is basically, I mean, in January when we started, we of course did not trash everything and restart from scratch. We're building on top of it. Okay, so this is the Aten platform. The Berlin platform. So the platform from Berlin is at Fraunhofer Focus, right? So here you can see that there is a mix of current deployment, new deployment that are ongoing. So for example, they highlight the NTN capability by adding a Starlink into their testbed. So that means that by September, you should expect that the Starlink is up and running and there, but it's not there yet today. In this case, the platform also highlights sometimes basically when they are associated with other deployments. So that's the third color that you will see from time to time, where, yes, this is part of 6G-SANDBOX, but it is not maybe in direct control or into the same physical location. Some of the platform may have like a distributed deployment where you have, for example, a campus and maybe a city center or a football stadium, for example. These are then basically associated deployment, as we would say, but they are part of the overall offering. So if you go, for example, in the Malaga case here, you see some blue as an example. These are basically associated deployment that can also be used mainly towards experimenters, but it gives you an idea about what is available from a technology and an infrastructure perspective. And then we have basically the Ulu platform, right, who is basically the last platform where we have a deployment. So again, in the technical documentation, you have an architecture. It gives you the list of who, what, and how is deployed. If you have additional questions on that, feel free to ask them. We will, of course, reply, but we'll also add this into the frequently asked question. Okay. You understand that 6G-SANDBOX starting in January, I don't have by end of January a full-blown document describing in detail all the architecture. We prefer to basically accelerate the open call to engage earlier with people. So we're doing the documentation now, By end of June, we have a deliverable due on the architecture, but that's too late for the proposals here. Okay, so we didn't want to basically postpone that, and that's basically where you have this additional information. Good. Other important technical aspects. So in the same document, you will see a list of measurement capabilities that we have deployed in the different facilities. Okay, so these test beds are highly instrumentalized, meaning that we have quite a lot of measurement capability technology that has been deployed or that will be deployed, so that you can basically get information on KPI or measure whatever you need. Verify the list because the capability are there. Try to build on top of that. Imagine you're coming with an AI engine. Well, yeah, we already have quite a lot of KPI monitoring. Maybe you want to connect that basically to the KPI that are coming out of the instruments or out of the software that we already have deployed. Okay, so verified, that's definitely described into the list, into the document. We also have some requirements that we need to know if you're coming with virtual environments or if you have specific operating system type of needs. So if you say, hey, I need a specific version of Ubuntu or a specific version of whatever, please let us that know in the feasibility check. Make sure that you are informing this. We have an infrastructure. There is a certain set of operating system in deployed, certain set of virtual functions and virtual environment deployed. If you want to use something else, we need to know, because we need to see if we can basically deploy that for you, or if this is something that you, as part of your work, need to take into account. Forget about asking the admin root password of the complete testbed. You will not get that. Okay, so just be realistic on what you ask from that perspective. Okay. From an interface and an API perspective, you have a description in the document about CAPIF. Okay. So we really would like to have all the modules and everything that we have in the testbed connected to CAPIF. Okay. So I think it's important that you look into that to see, to make sure that you can integrate and connect to this API. If you provide software, you provide, of course, some licenses, we may assume, of your software, except if it's purely open source and licensed. But assuming you're providing something, well, please provide the licenses for the duration of the project. If your software rely on another software where you also need a license, we expect you to come with these licenses too. So that should be part of your offer. It's not like, hey, I give you this piece of software, but you need to buy that piece of software. No, you come with a total package. We are integrating your package with you. We're not buying additional licenses, just to be very clear. If you're coming with hardware, let us know about your hardware requirements. If you need a nuclear power plant to run your hardware, we need to know. Okay, that's not something you just assume we have in each of the test beds. But hardware requirements, physical requirements, if you come with a rack, for example, we just need to know that you will need a rack, how much inches and things like that. So please make sure that you're not forgetting this type of information if you come with hardware. Of course, if you don't come with hardware, not applicable, right? Logical. Yeah, question. Yeah, go ahead.
So what concerns the CAPIF?
Yes. CAPIF.
So basically, if I bring a piece of software and I want to run it as a virtual appliance, I've seen with an chart. So the goal would be to expose whatever service it offers or topic, to expose it to the experimenters through CAPIF.
Correct.
But also to interact with the platform with the testbed services, for example, for measurement through CAPIF, or tools that are mentioned in the document, they expose their own APIs or.
It depends.
David, maybe you come here. So the question is, because you come here for the microphone for the online session. So the question is, if you come with a software, do you need to work through CAPIF for connection? Yes, but also for exposing the capability towards the experimenter. So David will answer that question.
So it depends the type of solution that you are providing. For instance, if you are providing an NWDAV solution, this NWDAV will be integrated with the 5G core, and then the APIs from AWDF will go through NEF and CAPIF. Okay. So we are considering CAPIF as the API manager for exposing APIs to experimenters in the trial network. Okay, but you don't need to go through Capit for every
Okay.
for every interaction with the components that are inside the triangle.
If we need something from the test bed in terms of measurements, this could be done through the APIs of the related. kit
correct.
and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, the slides will be available also, not only the whole session recorded.
No, the slides that I'm sharing here will also be made available. Yeah. So the slides you have the recording, you can read and listen to it afterward. I'm just, I don't know if the people online here, when a question is asked in the room, I try to repeat partially the question, and we at least make sure that the answer is clear for everybody. Okay, but yes, the slides will be made available as well. Okay, good. That's, I think, for me, the introduction. So I don't know how we're doing on time. It's 1:20, so
1:20 more or less, 1 minute to 1:20.
1 minute. So I'm 1 minute fast or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So just on time. So normally we're doing a short break now.
We have a
For 10
question in the
minutes.
chat.
Okay, there is a question in the chat.
You have touched regarding eligibility to participate.
Eligibility, yeah,
It is mentioned that beneficiary of the project is not eligible for this funding. Beneficiary of the project is not eligible.
correct.
The partners are not eligible.
Yeah, so we as 6G-SANDBOX partners cannot participate to the open call. So the question is about eligibility. So none of the partners in 6G-SANDBOX can apply to the open call. Okay, so we will not be competing with you.
Okay, now to refine the question.
Refine the question, yeah?
Keysight Denmark is a
Yeah.
partner.
Yes.
Keysight Spain is not a partner.
Yeah, so-
Can Keysight Spain apply?
Yeah, so if Keysight, for example, Denmark is a partner and Keysight Spain is not a partner, can Keysight Spain apply? We are checking that exact question with basically the European Commission, okay? Because it depends really how you read the grant agreement. Some people reading the grant agreement will say no, they cannot, okay? But this is something that was asked also by email before, and we are having a discussion with our project officer to validate whether they can or not. Now, I can say Keysight Spain, in my case, will not participate. So don't worry, Keysight will not compete for open call funding
Keysight
for
Sweden?
Keysight. No Keysight. There will be no Keysight applying. That's it. Now, of course, if it's a different, we have multiple multinational, right? And I can understand that this could be tempting also for people to work with infrastructure people, for example. Yeah, that would be, if it's allowed, then it is basically a commission decision. This is not something we can decide. But when you read the grant agreement, it looks like not, right? So, but we want to be 100% sure before we are stating no, just to be correct for everybody. So we want to make sure, and this has probably to go through the Commission Legal Service, I think, just to be 100% sure, because we're talking about public tendering here. Okay. Are there other questions on the chat? No more question on chat. Good. So we'll hold a quick 10 minutes pause. I'm sorry, I will not stop the recording, simply because if I stop the recording and I restart the recording for the Q&A session afterwards, we lose the first video. Stupid Teams thing. So we will cut the 10 minutes in the one that we're sharing, right? We'll find somebody to do the video editing. So if you have questions, we start in 10 minutes from now for asking questions, whether it's here or online, we're available. Okay, but we will leave the link open for everybody to hear the question and answer. For the people in the room, if you want to enjoy a nice salad, it's time to go and pick up your salad. For the people at home, enjoy your lunch. I think everybody's smiling in the room. You don't see it, but yeah. Okay, 10 minutes. So we resume at 1:32. Good, okay, we restart now. So there was first a question just when we stopped that I want to repeat for the record before we go on the chat questions. Somebody was asking about the contract, so and the payment. So if you look inside the contract, what you will see is that the way it is constructed is that for your project, you need to define milestones. Imagine that you go for 10K and you defined 2 milestones, and each milestone is, for example, set by you at 5K. Once you are basically doing your project, for each milestones you are achieving, you basically get the amount of money you have selected. So in this case, 2 times 5K, you get then the 10K. Now payment happens 2 times. We have a prepayment, if I remember correctly, And then at the end of the period, so when we're done with the main development, you get basically the rest of the money based on the milestones you have achieved. So imagine that you propose a project with 3 milestones at 5K each, and for whatever reason, you end up finishing only 2 milestones, and you say, look, the third milestones I cannot do. Then basically you get the amount of money associated with the 2 milestones, not with the 3. Okay, but you get a prepayment, and there is one payment at the end of your activity. So that does clearly mean that by February, you will get basically the money that you have applied, assuming you have reached your milestone. So we're not keeping money for later. We're not keeping money until the end of the project, all that kind of things. No, but the payment will happen after the first year review or not, that I don't remember timing wise. That's not the case.
Depends on the milestone.
Yeah. So it depends on your milestone. So make your milestones plan and basically look at the contract. We try to have it paid for you as soon as possible. Okay, good. That was one question. So I think we are in the chat. The question on multiple key sites I did answer, right? So just to be very clear, as soon as we know from the commission that indeed the same company with multiple legal entity cannot apply because they're part of the consortium, we'll put that into the FAQ, so that will be something added there, and we'll clarify the eligibility question. So we're the first project going through that in SNSJU. So we are doing a bit the exploratory work for the others. Once we know, they will also know. But these are the kind of questions that comes up from that perspective. Good. Then there was a question about the feasibility check. Yeah, the limit to submit the abstract is on the 23rd of June. But if you submit one today, we will look at it today, right? So of course you may not have an answer today, but we already have completed feasibility checks, just to be very open to everybody. As soon as you have one, you submit it. We will basically engage in the discussion and you will get it. So you don't need to wait until the 23rd. The feasibility check is also not, like I said, the black hole. You send it and we say yes or no. There will be answer with qualified questions, maybe from our end, to make sure, and then you answer to these questions. So it is more a discussion in that case, just to make sure that what you're basically doing makes sense, right? I mean, we're not there to waste your time doing something that you think makes sense when we say, look, it's not possible or this is not feasible. Okay. You can discuss specific places with the consortium, but it has to start first with a feasibility check. So you send your proposal, right? And then we will come back to you with the feasibility, and then you can have basically discussion. But it has to start with a feasibility check. We cannot take offline discussion. I mean, if you meet me in the hallway, we can of course have a discussion, but it's not something that will help you on the feasibility case. On the eligibility, the multinational case, as soon as we know and have clarity, hopefully later today, if not, it should be, I would say, within a week or so. We have asked a question already to the EU last week. We have not received an answer yet. As soon as we know that, we will let people know. And who to reach, open calls at 6G-SANDBOX. This is then getting to the team, the core team of the project, who then basically distribute the loads. And depending on the topic you are talking, you will be getting basically one person or another person. Okay, so that is really the intention of this mailing list, because you're reaching out basically to different people from the facility who can answer these questions. Next question online. One, it seems you assume that a company university will come with existing technology. What if we want to implement it from scratch or based on an open source project, the maturity technology criteria? Well, yes, somehow we hope that you're coming with something that you have already done, or that you're basically close to complete. Okay. If you start from scratch, we are not sure that the 6 months timeline may be feasible for you, but this is of course up to you to decide. Whether it's based on open source or not, this is up to you. Okay. What is very important is that the bulk of the work is done within the 6 months starting September. Okay. So that is very important, that we are making sure that the technology you bring is ready for the next open call. We don't want to have a proposal where you say, look, I will start and I will be ready by December 2027, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so we really are building technology based on what we have. The maturity of the technology, I think there it can be prototyping, right? It has to be something that is useful for others to use. That is, I think, important because this is becoming part of the sandbox offering towards experimenter. Honestly, what I said into another call when I presented the open call was, I think something that you should keep in mind is this is a kind of showroom of your technology, right? If you as a company bring something and it's a prototype, people can understand it is a prototype, but they also expect if they use your technology that you will be there to help a bit if the prototype is not working very well, right? If the thing keeps on crashing and your technology is completely useless, you may end up with an experimenter that wanted to build on your technology that will make a report to say, look, that technology and that company was completely useless, right? I mean, we want to have a certain level of maturity that people can use. And it's a bad publicity, in my opinion, to propose something that is completely useless, right? So this is up to you as a company, as a university. It's your reputation that you basically put if you do something from scratch that you have no clue, if you get selected, of course. Okay. Now, if your proposal require adding additional hardware, then basically you need to integrate that into your proposal. And so if you, for example, need to add a piece of hardware to make sure your technology is useful, add that basically to the proposal. And so we will not buy a LoRaWAN access point for you. Okay, it might be that there is a LoRaWAN access point coming through the open call, but here we as Sandbox, we do not have the authority to decide whether it will come there or not. It will be the external panel. So building on a proposal, assuming something else will be approved, is very risky. Okay, so that's very risky. So I think it's important that you bring what you need to make sure your technology is usable. Okay, eligibility of cost question. So here we are not asking you to justify the detail of your cost accounting, right? I think that is correct, huh? Pedro?
Okay, there is no.
So maybe come a bit closer here.
Okay, the idea is you should create a budget, a reasonable budget that could be part of the evaluation. But later on, we are not checking that you use the money as you were proposing. There is no additional justification letter. So for instance, in case of equipment, we are not applying any depreciation rule. It's up to you to decide how much are you allocating for hardware. But everything is in principle eligible, and there is no additional justification later.
Yeah. So if, for example, as part of your proposal, you assume that you are traveling one time to each of the platform, well, as part of your budget, you should assume that we will not ask you a travel report with a travel expense. Okay, that we are not doing. But if you fail, we need face-to-face time, travel cost is something that you can include as part of your expenses. Okay. So I'm continuing. If you have additional questions, put them in chat or raise your hands, no problem. Also, when I'm answering a question, if you feel that I need to continue or you have further question on the question we're handling, please raise your hand and we continue dwelling on that question until the answer is properly received. So don't be afraid about that. Good. Next question. There are some topics that rely heavily on the technical detail of each testbed, including hardware used, frequency bands, etc. Yes. I'm mainly referring to integrated communication and sensing, okay, of the advanced channel modeling. Yes. These extensions require antenna, software radio, possibly millimeter wave. In this case, it may be necessary to have direct communication with specific testbed and contact that has specific view of insight on the. Yes. Let's see if there is equipment available to what we can use. So yes, you can do that before 23rd of 6. So again, the proposal or the way to go, you write down what you're interested in, the type of questions you may have. It's not a limited finite set of questions. So, but you send that to open call. Then basically we will put you in contact with the right people to discuss about that topic. There will be a discussion possibility, right? It's not like, again, we're not talking to anybody. You can basically come, but it's the first step is through the open call email, say, look, we have interest in this topic. This is what we want to do. I would like to have a feasibility check. And this can be done well before 23rd of 6. Certainly, if you believe that there is quite a lot of discussion, the earlier, the better. Okay? Because from 23rd of 6, if everybody come with their question at that time, might be difficult to handle everybody at the same time. Okay? So there are no specific contact yet or made available to the outside per facility per topic. Again, once you send it to the general list, this is distributed internally to a set of people that are dedicated to the open call, and they will basically say, hey, I will pick up the topic, and they will be your interaction person from that perspective. And that person will make sure that you get all the information you need across basically the questions. Good. Next question, NWDAF TS23288 defines analytics, stats, prediction example. One could explain the AI need for NEF emulator. Pedro, if you want to answer that, then basically come close to the microphone. Thank you. I'll my banana.
I'd say that potentially this is a very specific questions for one of the platforms, in particular the Athens platform. So maybe you can submit your proposal to the open calls, and later on we will put you in contact with Athens to have more specific questions related to emulator. And now David, who is also the expert in NEF and CAPIR, will expand the more general question.
Yes. So NWDAF, they define the the APIs and the models to deal with network analytic statistics and data. What we are asking here is for AI tools or AI implementations on top of NEF APIs. So NEF itself exposes some APIs for quality of service, for location, and others. And we are requesting here companies that can build AI solutions on top of the NEF APIs, not the NWDAF ones.
So Leonidas, you had raised your hand, so feel free to unmute if you want to.
Okay, just thank you for the answer. So you are demanding for AI extension for the NEF emulator. Some AI extensions we are completely dependent on what is defined for the NWDAF, right? So it is not like getting the statistics for how many views were in a slice per average or the standard deviation, things like that. So you need some different AI types of analytics. And to that end, could you just provide me with an example to understand what kind of AI algorithms you are seeking? Like, I don't know, what it could be. Predictions, statistics in all data that is being captured. Some example of some AI capability you would like to have.
Probably we need to ask Demokritos if they have something in mind for this. But from the top of my head, I can think of if you are using the location API that is exposed in NEF, for instance.
Right. We are using that for now. We are using that, yeah.
Okay, so taking the location events coming from NEF and building some AI algorithms on top of this to predict, for instance, when a device can enter some specific area, some specific TAC or something like that. This is something that.
Yeah, Arilaos, I see your hands is there, so maybe.
Yes, just to confirm what David says to Leonidas. Hi, Leonidas, this is Arilaos from Demokritos.
Hello.
Yes, this is the idea. We mainly concern some predictive AI algorithms that could be executed based on the information that is provided by the NEF emulator, for example, location. So predictive algorithms is the most common ones that we are expecting, for example.
So, for example, one very common scenario is to predict the UE movement, right? Based
on
the availability.
Correct, exactly.
So this would be the very simple one, and you need some additional, more complex one, I guess, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Arilaos, anything else? Because your hands is still up. I guess you need to lower the hand.
No, forgot. Okay.
No problem, no worry. Okay, good. So let me go back to the to the list of questions in the order. So we just discussed NWDAF, right? So that's done, I guess. If a company wants to send proposals for several implementations, should it send one proposal per each one or only one proposal consolidating all the implementation technologies? We would recommend one consolidating. That would be our recommendation, because the risk that you may have with the expert panel is that if you submit 7 proposals for 7 individual topic at 10K each, for example, that they may not accept basically more than one. I think that's one of the risks we're facing.
But it depends also on the cost.
It depends on the cost. Yeah. Anyway, you have the limit per entity that you need to respect. So even if you do 25 technology, I mean, you will have to justify why you need more money, right? And that is, I think, the pieces where it seems to be a bit tricky, I think, from our perspective, because we don't really know how the expert panel reacts to that. Okay, Pedro, you want to say something?
Yes, I'd say that if you can link the proposals because the technologies you are proposing are part of a single solution, just one proposal is fine. But if they are unconnected, maybe you could be more interested in presenting 2 or 3 proposals, being aware that only one of them will be really selected at the end.
But is it automatically maximum one? Because if they are still below the amount of money, are the expert panel not accepting? For example, imagine that you have 2 proposals of 20K, they can still accept 2 of 20K, right? Because you're still below the amount of money from that perspective. But in the rules, it's written that it's like 1, basically. So that's the complexity. So I would say combine. That would be my feeling.
Anyway, this is something that we can also discuss in feasibility.
Yeah.
And recommend.
Yeah. Good. Arilaos, if you don't mind, mute just for So what is the release you want to work as? Release 16? There was a question, a continuation of Leonidas for the release. Arilaos maybe, or David, if you want to answer. Release 16? 16, 17, yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, next question. Can I find a technical document, the run metrics that are gathered via E2 to the near real-time RIC in order to know what metrics are available, understand what run network parameter can be optimized through XApps? That one is not in the technical documentation at this stage. So that is something we would need to add. So I think that's an action point we will be taking, and we will be augmenting the document to include that. Okay, so that's definitely something relevant as a question. It's not in the current documentation. We need
Adam.
Yeah, Adam, we need to do it, but say that's like what it's difficult. Adam is not in the room, unfortunately, to say by when we can do it, but we should be able to do it very fast, I think. Okay, so this one is something we will take as an action point for us. And again, if you need more documentation on something, please do ask also to the open calls, right? Send an email. Hey, I need more information on this. Ask. That's not a problem. Okay. It's not that we don't want to make documentation. It's just that it's a question of what is the necessary documentation. We've done the most we can on documenting basically based on what we believe is relevant for the large population. But here, for example, we have a very clear question. Ask the question. We will answer that question so that you can basically build your proposal. Okay, so no problem with that. So this question is will be handled as soon as there is an update to the document. This automatically goes on the page of the open call page. I think one thing we can do is to send an email to everybody to say that there has been a new document. So that is something we'll be able to do. Good. Next question. How the testbed facility are to be used after the end of the 6G-SANDBOX project? Any long-term perspective that may be considered in submitting the proposal? Very valid question. So, of course, 6G-SANDBOX as a project has basically a 3-year contract. That is the current activity. You, as providing technology to the project, you are providing technology for the duration of this contract. Okay, so this is for the 3-year. If we are late and we have an extension, might be 3.5 years, but we're not talking 5 years. I think everybody knows that there is typically like maybe 6 months maximum kind of extension. So that's the timeline for the contribution you're doing. Now, of course, the 6G-SANDBOX consortium, we have long-term intention. We want to continue beyond basically the current contract. We may file other proposals. We may find other means to basically continue with 6G-SANDBOX, but you're not obliged, and that's, I think, important. You're not obliged as part of this open call to commit long-term with us beyond the term of this contract. Okay. Now, if you're interested, it's very interesting for us to know, and we intend to continue. We want to basically, as 6G-SANDBOX, be the facility that will basically support all the SNSJU during the complete work program. So we have ambitions, let's be very clear, but you're not obliged as an experimenter to basically support us for the next 10 years. That is not what we're asking at this stage. But you can always flag it if you're interested. Good. Online, I run out of questions. So are there questions in the room? Okay, so, or you come here so that people can hear you if you don't mind, and then we can, so that people can just hear you, just to make sure that everything is clear for everybody. You will just ask. You don't need to be in front of the camera if you don't mind. That's up to you. It's up to you. Yes.
Very good. I have seen in the technical in this technical document that you support the O1 interface, but this means that netconf is supported in the for instance in the audio OCU platform, or
Interface.
O1.
the O1 interface.
The O1.
Which platform? In which platform?
In
This was written across, yeah, Malaga, for example, where you have the ORAN deployment.
Okay. Again, this is a question for Adam.
For Adam, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think then send that question by email.
Okay.
And then we can have the person. Not everybody from the consortium is here. So
Yeah.
any other question? No?
No.
Okay, good. Perfect. Any other question in the room? No? Good. Any other question online?
No.
Doesn't look like. Good. And I think this is it for the info session today. So again, questions, requests for documentation, open calls at 6gsandbox.eu. That's the best way for us to engage, because then you are directed automatically to the right specialist. So for example, the last question, we need Adam. Adam is attending a session, I guess, right now. It's impossible to have everybody at the same time. So the best way is to send your question, and we will get back to you. And yes, the multinational eligibility, we will fix that problem or that question with the Commission as soon as possible. It's not our decision, it's the rules basically, and we need to know it as well. And once we know, at least the other Stream C and Stream D project will know, because it will be the same answer for them. So it's not something we have to decide, it's something the Commission has to say. I can only say that me as a multinational, I will not compete with you. Be relaxed on that, okay? So that's for sure not the case. Good, thank you very much, everybody. And for the one at EuCNC, enjoy the afternoon and the lunch. And for the other one, have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.